Hey guys, happy 4th of July. Happy, well, I won't say American Independence. But yes, I want to welcome to another edition of Halftime Chat. And as I mentioned, you always have a special guest. And in the house, we've got British soul singer Mr. Beckwith. I do know it seems strange when you just see how your name is spelled and how it's pronounced, but we'll get into that. I do need to. We're also going to be live on Instagram for those of you who want to follow us there. You will see us live on Instagram as well. But and it's great we've got Stevie Street who has joined in. Stevie, how are you doing?
Good, sir. How you doing, both?
Yeah, really good. Thank you. Thank you for setting this up, Stevie. And Namdi, thank you for having me on the show. I'm super excited.
Yes,
We're,
yes,
we're
yes,
excited to get into the your new album as well. So anyway,
yes.
go on, Namdi. Let's start from the beginning.
Yeah, that is fine. So, but can you just at least introduce your name and how? Because people might just see your name and not know how to pronounce it.
So my last name is Beckwith,
Beckwith.
and we've abbreviated to B.K.W.H. So some people will be familiar with Beckwith. I started using the name around 2007, 2006. And when You're That Kind of Girl came back out in 2020, we were advised to maybe just shorten it up, make it a bit different. There was some other artists in the space called Beckwith as well, and we didn't really want to get mixed up. And I think with Spotify landing pages, Apple Music landing pages, we just needed something that was going to set the stage. And if you want to find me, you can find me BKWH.
Okay, okay. So we've got an international audience, so it's obviously good to get a picture as to where you were born and raised.
So I was actually born in Aberdeen in Scotland.
Okay.
And due to my father's vocation as an engineer, I pretty much grew up all over the world: Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Holland, Belgium, Ireland. So that's why I'm left with this very strange accent, which is quite mid-Atlantic. So I used to get teased a lot growing up in Middlesbrough over that. Because like, why is this strange voiced kid at our school? So that kind of accounts for my early childhood.
O-
Um, yeah.
Okay. I mean, I guess traveling in on all these places. When did music become something that you picked up?
So that was early. So, Stevie always brings a bunch. So let me just, Stevie has cost me so much money on the show with Discogs because he always brings up these like really rare R&B gems that I have to check on Discogs and buy. I think it cost me about £40 a month in purely just watching the show. There's one particular you got me was when Darren Lighty was on. So when I was growing up, I loved the Flex. I didn't know anything about them at all, apart from I knew Eric Williams was the lead singer. They were on House
Mm.
Party too. And then when you guys had him, he was a brilliant guest because he's such a hero of mine with like the work he did with Donald Jones. And then Stevie brought up the Marley Marl Volume 2 or like his second album. I didn't even know that existed.
Wow.
I was like, how did I not know that exists?
Probably because
So
it didn't do too well and it got deleted very quickly.
right.
Because
But
the
it just
copy
took
I
me back.
got, yeah, it was a deleted copy. It was so cheap at the time, and just got forgotten about. That's probably why, really.
But
Yeah.
as a fan of the show and being so grateful you kind of have me, I wanted to do like my impression of Stevie in a way. So so you asked me about how I got into music. So I have my very first ever 12-inch right here.
Wow.
So
Okay.
when I
New
was 3 years
edition.
old, yeah, Candy God, the very it's ruined like the cake because I've played it so much.
Wow.
But when I was about 3 or 4 years old, my parents raised me around music, but mostly around like rock music, pop music. But when I heard the New Edition music when I was, 3 or 4 years old, it blew my mind because you have like Ralph and he sounds so young. And then seeing the pictures of like young guys who I could kind of, they're not much older than I am. And I just became absolutely infatuated with them. So from my earliest memory, my whole family, my friends would say, I just wanted to be a member of New Edition and Ralph Tresvant at the same time. Um, so I think that as soon as I got that record. I got the bug. I mean, honestly, New Edition have played such a strong role in my life. Like choices I've made with university, things I've wanted to pursue.
New Edition.
Yeah, I'm a New Edition any diehard. I mean, I've practically pulled out all the early records that. So like you got Popcorn Love.
Wow.
You got Mr. Telephone Man. Like literally, these are my records I grew up playing on my parents' stereo. Because I know it's cool to say you like New Edition now. I know lots of people are like, oh, I saw the movie. I like it. Whereas someone like me, it was, you know, it was like oxygen for me. It was how I, you know, their sound was everything to me. And then obviously you got Bobby with King of Stage. And I remember another album I got was Half Crazy, the Chemistry album by Johnny Gill.
Okay.
Wow.
And then, you know, him joining New Edition for me as a 6-7-year-old kid it just blew my mind. I couldn't believe it because I was already in love with his music.
My goodness. When you were listening to New Edition, where were you living?
So that would have been in Middlesbrough. So, well, I lived in a place called Yarmouth Teesside. So you're talking 83 to 86, I would have been there. And then 86, pretty much 91, that's when I moved all over the world. And so my parents obviously would have cassette players. As I said, my parents are into music as well, just not the same type of music I am. So like my dad would have loved me to have been like a blues singer or a rock and roll singer. I think he wanted me to be like Mick Jagger or something, but he just couldn't figure out that I wanted to be like, you know, these guys wearing satin suits and, you know, with bow ties singing slow jams. So I would have cassettes. And I think that's when you're an only child like I am and you travel all around the world, music becomes like your friend in a way. So like any Heartbreak album, I mean, if you see the state of the cassette that I have that I used to play over and over again, I mean, it's ruined. And the other thing about New Edition is, you know, obviously you have 88 to 91. In 91, they released the Greatest Hits Volume 1. So what was perfect, I mean, I know you guys probably did this too, is your New Edition tape is already destroyed. And then the Greatest Hits comes out and then you can reload with that. So yeah, I owe those guys so much. Like
you were on New Edition very young though. I didn't even get into New Edition till Any Heartbreak album came out.
Oh, goodness.
Obviously, I knew Candy Girl, but I didn't put the two and two together when I bought. I remember buying Any Heartbreak and thinking, who are these guys? And then it was like, and then I had to put. So you were on them so young though, which is great.
Yeah, I think that, to be honest, I think when I go in studios and I can do things technically, vocally, that surprised, especially when I was younger, a lot of people. But I think when you're kind of doing phrases and riffs like Ralph and Johnny from like Can You Stand the Rain? I think in the UK, because they weren't big either, it just shocked people. Because another strong part of my story is the reason I became so good at 18, 19 is because I don't even remember. Well, I know you do. Milli Vanilli.
Mm-hmm.
So when Milli Vanilli kind of got exposed in the UK, because we had all the boy bands, none of those bands sang live, like your 911s, your Menagees, all those kind of groups. So what they would do when they would have under 15, under 16 nights at like the local nightclub is they would pull me out of school and my mom would take me to the nightclub and I would sing an a cappella version of, say, Shy's If I Ever Fall in Love. And the market trade and standards guy would be like, yeah, they're all going to sing live tonight. This kid just sang I'm Happy. And they'd sign it off.
Will you get paid for that?
Yeah, I owe Milli Vanilli. So like, for example, PJ and Duncan's first ever show, they sung a song called Tonight I'm Free. Now, obviously they didn't perform live. They mimed. But they needed somebody at that time who could, you know, perform live. So they'd go, okay, then everybody else must be singing live.
Wow. Well, you getting paid for all this stuff?
I'm not sure if I got paid, but I got exposure. I think it was a case of it allowed me to perform in front of, you know, hundreds of little kids really when I'm 15, 16. So it gave me, you know, great exposure. And then when I came to London when I was 17, it set me up beautifully, like with label meetings and
okay. So before we even get this, and you mentioned getting into New Edition, and I think most of us would have started off with Candy Girl and Mr. Telephone Man, seeing them from there, and then I think if you weren't in America, in some cases when they after Bobby left, I don't know how popular the music was internationally until then when Bobby blew up. Just at the same time they did the Any Heartbreak, and I think it's almost like they both pushed each other in a way that they actually had two great albums at that time. But where did the actual singing part come in to your life?
From So I would do it in front of family and friends, and everybody was freaked out that this little like kid from Teesside could sing or try and sing like Johnny Gill. And I think I mentioned to you before when you had Howard Hewitt on, where my mum would always kind of get me to try and sing This Love Is Forever by Howard Hewitt. So when that came out, like maybe 91, 92. So I was definitely because my mum's got an ear for music and a very commercial and good R&B ear. She would, I would play songs by Keith Washington, like Kissing You by Keith Washington. But it was Cooley High Harmony. When Cooley High Harmony came out in 91, it might have come out in 90 or maybe, but I got it late. I got that European version, with the blue cover.
Yeah.
And honestly, anybody who knows me knows that I don't think I spoke to anybody for a year because I was just listening to that album consistently because I was so in love with that album. That's why when I was on the cover of Blues and Soul, I had to wear the Boyz II Men t-shirt as a way to say, thank you for making me, have this realization that I wanted to do music.
But growing up in Northern England, listening to R&B, that might not seem as common. How did that sit with people who knew you out in school and stuff?
There were moments which weren't fun because I like basketball. I really love like American black culture, hip hop music. All my idols, as I said, were like all the posters on my wall were like Biggie Smalls, Nas, New Edition. I had a Guy poster on my wall. So a lot of kids found that a bit different. I think demographically, the UK was in a completely different place as well. Because again, I go back to New Edition. When Home Again came out, Top of the Pops did like a competition where you could win the opportunity to meet the guys in London and introduce them on that week's Top of the Pops.
Wow.
So my parents allowed me to come to London that pretty much whole press week to kind of see what was going on and what it was about. And what I couldn't understand is all the people who'd come to watch him were like 40-year-old English ladies called like Pam and Sue. And I was like, what is going, like, this doesn't seem right to me. Like, where are all like the young ladies who look like Total and Jade and yeah. And what they told me is like, look, at the time in like 1983, 84, the demographic would have been strong, indigenous English people around. So all those young girls, the teen fans at that time, would grow up in New Edition and they were still in love with them. I think that's why Michael Bivins always refers to the UK as New Edition friends rather than fans.
Okay.
So they had that warm with Candy Girl.
Did you win the competition?
No. There was some older ladies won it. But you know what I will say is they were real New Edition fans and you could tell they really enjoyed it. And yeah, it was one of those where I could have been defensive about it and asked them like questions about Ralph's second album, being really geeky about it. No, live and let.
So I guess we're just hearing about New Edition being an influence, but when did you start? You started singing among family and friends, but were you singing in school or where else were you getting?
No, that'd be more difficult. I think. I think I found secondary school pretty tough at times. So I think if you go to a comprehensive school, it's a lot of times it's survival. So I think that anything where you kind of raise your head up a little bit and you say, "Oh, I want to be an R&B singer," a lot of the kids I went to school with have no idea what that means. Especially because they would have been into Britpop and all that kind of stuff. I think that R&B and hip hop in that part of the world was incredibly rare. Newcastle, maybe like some of the bigger cities, it was more popular. I mean, I have this story that I always tell when I met Joe Thomas when I was, I'd have been like 13, 14 when he did the Everything album.
Okay.
My mom took me to Newcastle to meet him at HMV. And I got to sing with him. I mean, Joe at this time is so young. He's like 21, 22, the first album. But he was the first R&B singer that I'd ever met. So I'd met like boy band members like E17, 911, those guys. But I'd never met an R&B singer before. And Joe on his first album, he was singing phrases and riffs, which were incredible to me, especially on the I'm in Love. He's got that crazy one that leads into the bridge.
Mm.
And I think he was so shocked as well that this little kid was coming up to him and asking him all these questions and singing his song. And he let me sing End of the Road by Boyz II Men to him. And I'm not sure if it was good or not because I was nervous. But he told me it was great. And he told me that I had all the potential in the world. And after he did his signings at the HMV, he took press questions. And the Northern Echo asked him, they said, what gives you the motivation to write so many songs that you do and to be so active in the industry? And I was front row and he pointed at me and he was like, Shorty's like this little kid here, because I know he's going to go home and he's going to sing, he's going to play, he's going to write. And that's what motivates me to keep on top of my game. And I'm sure he can't remember that, right? Like I put to him that he might say that to everybody, but to me, honestly, it happened like me 30 years ago, but it was still probably one of the highlights of my life. And it definitely put me in a path where I'm like, that's, again, it reaffirmed what I wanted to do.
Our friend DJ Sochild says he can relate as well, being a musical outcast.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that made it a little bit worse for me as well is I dressed like I was in Naughty by Nature. So like my style guides growing up were like, there's a video the Boyz II Men did called, I can't remember what it's called, but they released a VHS tape. And I pretty much bought all the clothes that like Sean and Wanye were wearing in that video. And again, in the Northeast, that's not, why are you wearing XXL ice hockey tops? And why are you wearing your cap backwards? And why do you keep calling everything fat? It didn't really work in that environment. So I kind of knew that I knew what I wanted to be. So I think that's why I've been so successful in London, because I could come to London and be like my authentic self. And everybody's always accepted me.
Oh, what were your parents saying when they were seeing the son with what might have seemed like an identity crisis?
They loved it. Oh. They loved it because I was original and an individual. So I think what they would have disliked is if I'd gone into the crowd and been a normal person. I think the fact that I'd kind of made a mark and wanted to be different. And it was positive as well. Like I did things like I read once that when I was 12 that Babyface didn't drink alcohol. So I was like, right, I'm not drinking alcohol because Babyface does not drink alcohol. So, because he, again, is such a massive influence to me. And I looked up to all these guys. So that plays a big role in your upbringing.
When it came down to the actual stepping away from singing at home and going into the public sphere, what was the shift there?
It's quite easy, to be honest with you, because where it was comfortable for me is doing these under 15s, under 16s nights. You're always first. So I've probably got 100 people, maybe 80 people, and I'm singing songs that I know backwards. I'm fairly good with pitch, so I could keep the song, fairly good standard. And it just becomes repetitive. So especially when like the American boy bands would come down, so you'd have like Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, O-Town, LFO, and I'd have to open for all these guys. But what I would say about the American boy bands is compared to the English ones were dreadful. Like honestly, just you have people called Boyzone. I mean, explain Boyzone to me. It just does. But when NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys came, you could see these guys knew about Boyz II Men. You could see they probably listened to Shy and Hi-Fi, and their harmonies were really good. So from a vocalist perspective, I had to step my game up to kind of match them. And it was nice. I mean, the O-Town guys like Eric Michael, Trevor, they're really good guys. And you can speak to them about New Edition, things like that. The NSYNC guys and the Backstreet Boys guys were really managed tight. So you couldn't really get access to them. And, it was quite ferocious the way that they were kind of managed, to be honest with you. I got to perform with Immature as well. That was a good show. That was in 96 on the We Got It They did a UK tour, and I got to be on a TV show. I think it's called 54321. It was on live TV. So that was pretty cool. I got to meet
But
like
how are you
Marcus
getting
Houston.
these opportunities to meet and sing? I mean, did you have a manager this year?
No, it was just through performing live and getting agents. Agents would see you and they'd say, "Look, we've got these guys coming in." I was probably cheap. I probably didn't cost a lot of money. I didn't have a lot of baggage because at the time I'm performing to a CD, so my costs aren't huge. I guess I was quite marketable as well when I was younger. Don't want to say I'm not marketable now. Number one album right now, but, you know, back then I think it was a lot easier to kind of get in those spaces, and there wasn't a lot of people doing it back then. Not a lot of people either could do music back then, like in an R&B kind of way, or there wasn't enough kids doing it.
But then, when did you think you actually wanted a career in this?
Oh, I knew early. I knew from about 13, 14 that I was gonna. What I found difficult growing up again in the Northeast and spending my teenage years is what people envisioned for you to do to become popular in music. So my idea was, as soon as I'm 16, 17, I'm coming straight to London. You know, I'm gonna perform wherever I can. I'm gonna, you know, meet all the DJs. Trevor Nelson's gonna play me. Ronnie Harrell's gonna play me. You know, I'm gonna self-produce. I'm gonna write, because at this time I've always written and produced. So like I did music at university, so I've always been self. I'm not saying I'm good. I'm not like Tank good self-contained, but I can, you know, I can work. So that was my. But what I kept on getting, the advice I would always get was join a boy band or go to Blackpool. Now I'm not going to Blackpool and singing Rick Astley. Nobody. That, you know, no disrespect to Rick. You know, obviously he's incredibly sick, but that's not. You know, if you listen to my album, that's not exactly the sound that I'm going for. So it was a case of trying to get as much exposure as I could. I think that's why I really don't like performing live as much now, unless it's performing with an artist that I really love. Like Horace Brown, opening for him was like a huge honor for me. So Sugar Ray made that happen. Shout out to Tony, such a good guy. And he used to look after Horace, and he was like, "Horace is in town, do you want to open?" I was like, "Yes, 100 times." Like, he's one of, you know, his album, both his albums, the album on Uptown and the other, I'm in. But if it's just performance sake, I just don't get the same thrill well, I didn't really get it in the first place. I just did it because I like music, as opposed to I needed something back from a crowd, if that makes sense.
Okay. So I guess we'll get into the economics of having a career in music. But I guess when did it? You know, I guess what were you doing? Were you mirroring when you decided to move to London? What did you see was different in the music scene that you felt like you could succeed here?
Well, probably I was naive and thought that I didn't really see the UK equivalents of what I wanted to do, which I think later down the line hurt me a little bit. So I would go to a place, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the CD bar in Brixton. So that's essentially where I spent.
I remember going there a few times.
Right. Well, you might have even seen me there, Stevie. I was there every day of the week.
Only a few times.
So my first like proper music manager was a guy called Jason Smith, who worked at the CD bar, and he played like basketball for Brixton. Very popular guy in the area. He was linked to like the Made Men, which I think was Jimmy Roseman. Who's the guy that 50 Cent doesn't like? Who was the games manager? Jimmy Roseman?
No, not sure.
No.
Well, he doesn't like a lot of people, so.
So he kind of looked after me, got me into sessions, and yeah, you'd bump into other singers like Sean Scoffery, Thomas Jewel Stock was around, Cassius Henry, and then I realized, oh wow, like these guys are real singers, like top level. I mean, Cassius Henry on the Hinda Hicks album, I remember them playing that song Sunshine to me, and they're saying like, "We need you at this level," and I was like, wow, what a performance.
And but really, was this?
I think this is 98, 99, maybe 2000. But I would have been with Jason from 98 to 2000 or 2001. And it wasn't really going where I wanted it to go. And it probably the same for me. Probably I wasn't as successful as he probably wanted me to be. And I wasn't doing things that I wanted to do. But it led to a meeting with Paul Ambrosius, which is Marvin Ambrosius, who's my best friend and songwriting partner, and Marsha Ambrosius' father. And he kind of really took me under his wing. He, obviously put me in contact with Marvin, and we've, become best friends ever since. And he, I was best man at his wedding. He was best man at my wedding. When the industry kicked me out, Cookie Ambrosius, Marvin's mom, kind of took me in, and Berta Williams, his auntie.
So this Ambrose is not Flowtree you're talking about?
Yeah, Flowtree.
Okay, so
Paul Ambrosius, Marsha's dad, is the guy who really found me and gave me my break.
So had Marsha already come out with Flowtree by the time he found you?
No, she was about to blow up. So the album hadn't come out yet. It was on like the precipice of coming out.
Okay.
And then Paul
so when he found you, did he introduce you to Marsha back in those days?
No. So Marsha was already in Philly. Yeah. Okay. So Marvin was kind of like the, who I run around with, because Marvin had just signed a publishing company with Perfect, which is Trevor Horn's company, or his publishing company.
Okay.
So then we hung out and, literally became inseparable. So if you saw me, you saw Marvin, pretty much. And Stephanie Ambrosius, his wife, was also like one of my best friends and big sisters. So.
And what were they hoping to do with your career? I mean, who did they see and think, yeah, we can try and fill a gap with you here?
Well, I guess it's probably the guy who I saw and realized that I could do this. So is probably John B. Because when John B came out in 95, that was like, he was the first guy I could look at and think I could do that. Not that I could, he's a legend to me. I adore John B. What I mean is, there's somebody who looks a little bit like me, who is working with Babyface, who has great records like Pretty Girl. Because my joke with my friends is, if everything goes wrong, I'm going to become a John B like tribute artist. I'm just going to sing like Pretty Girl, Someone to Love. They don't know. Even though he's in the UK right now, he's in Reading. I think he already sold out. So not that he needs me to be a tribute artist. But yeah, he was the first guy. I was like, he looks like the boy next door. He's super cool. Everybody loved. I mean, I've never heard anybody say a bad word about him ever.
And I don't know, because I was in America when he came out. But did he do well here in the UK?
He was top 40 here. So he got top 40 with Pretty Girl. I think Someone to Love got like late 50s. But R&B up until 2004 just didn't sell here.
Wow.
So if you think Montel Jordan, This Is How We Do It, that got to 11 in the UK charts.
Wow.
But in the R&B world, we looked at that as a number one. So, I mean, Adina Howard got to 35 with her like big song, which the Sugar Babes took to number one.
Okay. Justin Timberlake, did he do well?
Yeah, but Timberlake's like 2002, 2003, right?
So you're talking about, so you're taking, during the 90s, black R&B music didn't really.
No. Wow. So like No Diggity, you think how big No Diggity is. So if you go on Wikipedia and you look at No Diggity, it's like number one USA, number one Australia, number one Germany. UK, it's like 6.
To get R&B and soul heard in this country in the 90s was such a struggle.
Yeah.
That's why there were so many pirate radio stations about. It's a massive.
Well, here's a story for you. So before I met Paul Ambrosius, I got taken to BMG, and BMG were really excited about having me. And they just signed Lamar. He was represented by.
Has he not just done the? He did a show. Did he a TV show on BBC? Did he know?
Yeah.
Had he just finished that or before that?
I mean, I don't want to spill all Lamar's tea. As someone who's known him a long time, but so Lamar actually was signed to BMG. He got signed by Simon Cowell. I want to say 99 or 98. And he was signed to a management company called Best Kept Secret. And they were like Jason, my manager's rival in a way. So when they signed to BMG, Jason took me to BMG to see if I could get a deal. And they really liked me. But the problem I had with BMG is they wanted me to do cover versions. So they were like, here's your first 3 singles. You're going to do a cover version of Poison by Belle Biv DeVoe. And I was like, I can't sing Poison by Belle Biv DeVoe. Are you insane? My friends, the majority of my friends are black, so they have black mothers. And if I sing Poison, they're going to kill me. Like, I'm not going to be welcomed in their homes anymore. And then like, oh yeah, but after Poison, it gets better. You'll do Sensitivity. But I was like, no. I'm like, I have to meet Love President one day. I'm not going to sing his song. And they finished with Rock With You by Bobby Brown. I was like, come on, this is not going to. Yeah, but Lamar was dropped by BMG and then went on Fame Academy.
Oh, because I came to the UK at your Fame Academy. Okay.
So his timeline is BMG, then Fame Academy, and then he blew up and was mega successful.
Do you remember? I'm trying to think of another white artist, who straddled between pop and R&B in the late 90s, and he's forgotten about him. Do you know a guy called Kavana?
Oh, yeah. So Kavana, I performed with him. So he was signed by Nigel Martin Smith, who was That's manager. But he was incredibly talented. Yeah. Like, his voice is like butter. He's so good. But my problem with Kavanaugh is I wouldn't have done the pop stuff. And I was so outspoken as a young guy. I just wasn't having it. Marvin will probably tell a story. But so like my first album. So if I can just skip to me and Marvin together writing songs. And people start taking notes of us and liking us. And we end up at EMI, and I get a development deal at EMI. But they got me on the provision that I'd be self-contained. So it'd be, me and Marvin would write the album, me and Marvin would produce the album, which I guess to them is like, that's $12K outlay on like music production and writing. Your marketing's going to be, and then we'll see how they do. But I wasn't going to sell for that because, I was like, I want proper producers. I grew up with like a writing pad writing that I wanted Tim and Bob to write my album. Babyface, Joshua Thompson. I wanted those guys. Devontae, 2B3 Production. Even in the UK, right? You had Ignorant, Steve Anthony. Those are the guys I wanted. Or even
you needed someone. You needed to find someone with like 500 grand to afford the production budget for that, especially in them days.
You've beat me to it.
That's how much it would have cost.
So we got sent a beat CD by No ID, who produced Common and Kanye West and Jay-Z. And the first song on that beat CD was 1980 that Estelle bought and took and turned into a hit. Track 3, I fell in love with on that beat CD. So the beat CD was the best I've ever heard any producer. Every song on there was pretty much a hit. So then you had all artists like Estelle, myself, trying to bid to buy these beats from No ID. And track 3 on the CD, I fell in love with. And me and Marvin wrote a song to it within, half an hour. I went to EMI. I put it on George, who's my A&R man's desk. And I was like, this is the song. We have to have this. You have to get me this beat. And it was like, I don't want to, it was probably about 25, 30K for the beat. And they were like, there is no way we're going to pay that amount of your budget on this song. And then a week later, I went back and was like, look, can you negotiate? And they said 50 Cent's already bought it. Wow. And that beat turned into Smile by G Unit. Wow. So that beat was originally mine and Marvin's. Like we were the first people to write to it. We were the first people to hear it. But unfortunately, 50 Cent's the biggest star in the world. G Unit, the biggest group in the world. We just had no chance.
Wow.
And then we got.
Go ahead.
I was going to say the same album. So that happened. So I'm heartbroken. We've lost that beat. Then we're sent a beat CD by Darren Jones from 112. And Darren Jones at that time was a hot producer because of all the work he'd done with 112. Sorry. So we went through that beat CD. And I think it was track 6 on that beat CD. Marvin was like, Jay, this is your song. We got to do this song. And we wrote this beautiful ballad. we submitted to EMI. They were like, well, Darren Jones probably wants 15, 20K for the beat. We're not going to. And it turned out to be Storm for Jamie Foxx.
Wow.
So my first album, EMI should have had Storm by Jamie Foxx on it and Smile by G Unit. But budget-wise, we couldn't make it work.
I'm just trying to understand, because producers themselves were making that amount to go into the studio. So you're just saying you're just buying a track for that amount. That just seems quite high compared to what a producer would say. Yep, let's bring you in the studio. We'll get paid 20 grand to produce that track. I mean, I'm looking producers. So all you just laid your vocals.
Yeah, exactly. So back in those days, I mean, they still do now. I've just been sent a zip file of 50 songs from a new producer who wants me to go through it. So essentially what producers would do is send you 20, 30 beats on a CD. You would write to it, and then they would have, the choice whether to use it or not.
Oh, the producer will still say, no, we don't want you to use the track.
No, I think copyright-wise, we probably couldn't get away with it, to be honest with you. And I think Marvin would be the only person who remembered the lyrics. I'm rubbish with that stuff. I can't even remember what we wrote. I just know that the Smile one, we called that one I Don't Give a, and we had like a scratch come in for the swear word.
Okay. But
and the Darren Jones one.
What year did you go to London? This is what we need to find out here, Namni, because I need to know what year you went to London and how come it is only till now that we're hearing music from you. Because I'm trying to think, why have I not heard from music from you in the 90s or 2000? Have I missed something here?
No, so I came to London in 98. So I came to university. I went to Buckinghamshire University. And I probably didn't record really or have anything out until 2001.
Okay.
And I had a EP out called so my recording name back then was John Paul. So it wasn't Beckwith. So it was my actual legal name, JON-Paul. So I had an EP. It was called the Rain EP. It had a song called Bad Girls track 1, Rain track 2, and a song called Candy Rock track 3. And what I would do back then is, because obviously I'm managed by Bigger now. Back in the day, 2000, 2001, I would go to his record shop, and I would hang out with like his parents. His mom and dad were the sweetest, kind of nicest people. And they would like look after me while he was in meetings with like Sony or whoever. And he would come and he would listen. And, I remember he told me that when that Rain CD, we got him pressed up the promos. He said they were one of the quickest CDs to leave the Blues and Soul office. They all pretty much were taken up immediately.
Wow. I don't remember it, I'll be honest. I don't remember seeing it.
No, so you guys have Shocker on next, right?
Yes. I have him next week, yeah.
So Shocker's linked with a DJ called DJ Memsy. And DJ Memsy used to be on a station called Extreme FM. And he's the guy who really blew me up in the early days. So if you were in North London, you definitely would have heard like Rain, Candy Rock. They were everywhere.
Okay.
But maybe I don't know if copies got up to the Northwest. Maybe I don't know if they did, or was anybody from the Northwest playing any tracks?
I don't know. I was purely based in London.
Yeah.
I didn't do any shows in the Northwest.
I mean, you had to go to London really to get anywhere in the music industry in this country. I think you totally did the right thing going from Middlesbrough to London.
Yeah,
I don't know what was in Middlesbrough. It's even like in the Northwest before soul and R&B. We've had a northern soul scene.
Right.
Did that go as far as the Northeast? Was there a northern soul scene up there?
I don't know, to be honest with you.
Playing all them old 7-inch singles and old DJs.
Yeah, I think I was
any sort of black music scene up there at all.
You would have got reggae. You would have got another group that I grew up loving is a hip hop group called New Flesh for Old.
Okay.
They were the first rap group from Middlesbrough.
Okay.
And they were the first group that I'd seen with like a cassette out, a vinyl, and they did really well. So they were again someone where I could say, okay, somebody from my area has been successful. I can follow this path. Sorry, I don't know what's happened to my voice. It's completely gone. I think, I'll blame hay fever for now.
Well, you went so celebrating Sheryl Crow and Sheryl. What are they called? Get Sounds of the
Sheryl
Underground.
Cole
Yeah, what are they called?
goes
Girls
aloud.
Aloud.
Yeah, guess that. You
No,
went
but I can tell you this though. So I met Bigger and Trevor Nelson when I was 16. They came to Middlesbrough to a nightclub called The Empire. And because I was such a big blues and soul fan, I totally just grabbed Bigger straight away. And Ronnie Harrell was there as well. And I just talked their ears off for hours, asking what artists I need to listen to, what I need to do, how do I break into the scene. And they've always been so cool. I mean, Trevor Nelson would play, I think it was a place called Applebee's in Middlesbrough. It wasn't like a particularly big venue, but I think because he had the lick on MTV, he was slowly breaking the market in the Northeast. So we could touch it, but we just couldn't. I couldn't sign to a label there. As soon as I came to London, I was in meetings with Warner Brothers. I was in Bonafide Studios in Old Street. I saw like the Beautiful South recording album. I saw David Gray record albums in front of me. London is the scene. And I get a lot of hate sometimes from other people from other cities in the UK when I say that, but it's just the truth.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think the music industry around the 2000s in America was going through its own transitions. I think Napster really, you know, made a dent, and then when it went into the whole Apple, so there was a lot of mergers between labels, and they were trying to consolidate cost and things, and so it meant a lot of our 90s acts started getting dropped, and they were looking for the promoting hip hop, which became a lot more affordable to promote.
Yeah.
What was the shift in the music industry in the UK during that time? What was the emphasis? Who were they looking to sign?
Well, I can tell you this. So I'll kind of adapt this into my own story. So when it didn't work out for us at EMI, when they didn't think they were going to recoup from me, and they kind of got rid of me, Marsha came back to the UK, and this kind of shows that Marsha is the coolest person ever. So she was busy. She'd just done Justin Timberlake. She'd done Michael Jackson. She was honestly probably the biggest writer in the industry at that time. And she was in London, and everybody wanted meetings with her. But I remember like we were watching a movie at Marvin's house, and I was really, downbeat. I was like, look, I've done all these songs. I feel like I'm, I should be blowing up. And we recorded a song together called My Love, and we packaged up like a quick little album, and we had a meeting with Relentless Records and Virgin Records, like in this big grand meeting room. And Marsha really fought for me. So she essentially told these guys at Virgin she would write, executive produce my album. Me and Marvin obviously being like the main writing contributors. And they still didn't go for it. And the thing that was really sly and unfortunate about it is I'm in this room with them, and they're trying to pitch their own artists to Marsha to write for.
What?
So like, yeah, we're not sure about this kid, but we've got this other artist that we think you'd write brilliantly for. And you know what? She picked me up. She picked Marvin. She was like, I'm not here for this. I'm not interested. If you're not signing this guy right now, who I really believe in, and we're walking out. And she took me, and we walked out. It was awesome.
I would have said, wait, can we try? Maybe I could write for him.
Yeah. So it was to see somebody be that loyal, who was that famous at the time, and still is. I mean, look at her. She's number one in America. She's huge. But to have the number one writer of that time back you and really fight your corner and not take any other stuff. But so I did meet one of those A&R guys a year after. And what he told me was the UK R&B album sales were about 5,000, 6,000 per album. And he was like, look, even if we gave you like $250,000, if you only sell 5,000 albums, we're out of a job. They're like, R&B just does not sell in the UK the way that we need it to. Plus, they told me other stuff like you can't keep quoting Malcolm X on like TV shows, and you can't. You have to be less militant in your attitude. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever.
But I think but that's an important thing that you have to that I definitely um, understand and believe, and I respect the fact that they're saying it. It's a business. Labels are not a charity. Now, yes, if they sign an Ed Sheeran, they can have the vanity projects that they can move around with that can win a Grammy or because it's of creative stuff. But I guess it's important that they can be seen to be successful, a top 20 or top 40 hit. And this is where I remember interviewing DJ Soulchild, and he was stuck to I'm doing my hip hop and R&B. I'm not going to be the Switzerland's Backstreet Boys kind of thing, and that's sticking to your principles. While others would say, "This is a chance through the door." I'll sing the pop song, and then maybe I can get big enough to be able to do my own thing, like Pink. Pink did the R&B stuff, and then now I want to get I could the door's open for her to get into the rock. Was there any time you thought about what? Let me get in and change when I'm in.
No, this is why when they say Pixar didn't happen. Well, Marvin, he can attest to all this. I wrote a song called "Make Love," and it was a really good song. I might release it on my next album. And Sony were putting together like a boy band, and they'd got 4 members, but it wasn't working. They didn't really have a hit song, but they had an album ready, and they offered me a lot of money to join. Essentially, I wouldn't have sung on any of the songs. I'd have mimed and pretended like I'd sung on them a little bit, like Destiny's Child when they brought in like Michelle and Farah. They didn't sing in any of those songs on Writings on the Wall, but they pretended like they did. And they wanted me to kind of go along. I think I was represented by Grace Moncrief at that time. And what they offered me was play nice and play along and smile and be the boy next door with your quiff and all that stuff. And we'll give you the 3rd single. Like Make Love will be the 3rd single. It's pretty much 100% yours and Marvin's. You can do what you want with it, and we'll just back you. But I couldn't do it. I just was not interested. And I called Marvin. I apologized to him because I was like, "Look, you've probably lost money here as a writer." But I've never wanted to do it, like ever. I have to do music that I'm either into or I just can't do it.
Was you stubborn though with, say, the production sounds you wanted to sing on during that time?
Because 100%.
I've listened to your vocal, right? And I've worked out in my head what your vocal would sound best. It's just my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Just listening to this album that you've that you've released now, because your vocal, it's got a certain sound, it's got a certain style. It's not, you can't relate. You could say you sound like this. You sound with you've got your own vocal sound. There's only one singer I can relate your vocal sound to, and that is a guy in. Do you remember the group called Joe Public?
Yeah. Live and Learn.
I think his name's Jake. Listen to him sing.
I got the album somewhere around here.
Yeah, I think it's Jake. It's one of them, and then listen to you sing, because it's like I'm not comparing you, but it's got that sound. But I feel like your style of voice, it works great with New Jack Swing.
Yeah,
I
have to thank Marvin though for that. So
I don't even like you say you didn't want to do pop, but I'm saying like even like 80s dance pop sound, your voice would be perfect for. And it's in a way that's all coming back. If you see what's coming out on the underground now and what's coming up, that's the sound, mate.
Stevie, you're the executive producer of my next album.
Personally, and don't take this the wrong way, but the hip hop soul thing, I don't think it. I think you do well, but I just don't think it suits your voice.
Mm.
But I think I'm just going off what I'm hearing on this album. The swing stuff, the stuff with the Ralph Tresvant sounding track sounds fantastic. You even done a tribute here to some of the ladies who that sounds amazing. And even like the upbeat Can't Beat the Weekend sounds great. The upbeat stuff, it sounds fantastic. But I think you're missing a trick here with the 80s sound, mate. And that 80s sound at the moment, if you walk around now, how are all the guys? What are all the guys? What's the trend at the moment? And I know it's going to be here for a while. They've all got 80s moustaches and mullets. And I'm not saying you should go look like that, but there is credibility in a groove, like a pop groove boogie dance sound, and I think your voice would, mate, you'd kill it. But that's just my opinion. That's just my opinion, anyway.
I respect it, and I really appreciate the advice. You know, I'll take that on, and maybe we'll speak afterwards. But I'm not against that at all. I would love to.
I'm thinking during that early 2000 sound where label is the try to do something with you. Was you like, I want this heavy hip hop sound with a rapper on, blah, blah. I mean, you could have got it because most of them labels, like Sony, BMG, they all had street teams and they were all run by guys like Semtex who were into hip hop. This is why I don't understand you may have got that chance, because their priority was to promote hip hop. It weren't to promote R&B.
Yeah.
So maybe
there's one
this rapper, you know, the Big Brothers, all them UK grimy that were coming out at the time. Just pre-grime, I don't know. You could have come out.
It just didn't work. I mean, again, we tried. We were everywhere. You know, we'd had development deals. We were writing with people. You know, we had Marsha on our team. I mean, she's literally just done Cry Me a River with Justin Timberlake. You know, she just wrote Michael Jackson's last. For some reason, it just didn't connect. And I think maybe you're right. Maybe I was a bit too open, and I wouldn't move at times, because I would go into meetings where I say I want to be. So one of my big idols is Kenny Green from Intro. So if you listen to my song number 2, Be There, that is like my tribute to him in a way, you know, because he was such a brilliant writer. Like, he wrote a song called Miracles for Men of Vision. That second Intro album, I know it didn't do as well as the first one, but I think from a songwriting perspective, that second album is a lot superior. So I always wanted to be clever lyrically. And he was one of the real big inspirations for that. And I think probably at that time, if it wasn't like an intro type beat, I probably wasn't interested. I definitely wasn't interested at that time at pop music. And I think, like we discussed earlier, because I'd had such a tough upbringing with people not liking R&B, and I'd had to fight my corner. This is what I believe in. These are the guys I believe in. That's probably why I stuck to it and have stuck to it so strongly. Because people told me I couldn't do it. You know, it doesn't make sense. How can you come from Middlesbrough? How can you come from Teesside and be taken seriously? I mean, my first nickname in Brixton at the CD bar was Country. They called me Country because they couldn't figure out my accent. Like, who's this guy coming here and telling us about New Edition and R&B music and gospel music and commissioned and Take 6? It just didn't work. And you're probably right, Steve, to be honest, that I did stick to those hip hop principles. I mean, so you probably caught me the first time when I came back in 2008 with You're That Kind of Girl, the original mix.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Soul Child, because obviously Soul Child is, you know, so important to the industry. Like, I really like the fact he's honest. He's so brilliant to work with, and he knows music inside out. And I remember in like 2012 with Sadat X. And he was like, nah, man. He was like, I'm not feeling that. He was like really honest, like he always is. He was like, the original in 2008, that was a banger. You know, everybody played that song. It was huge, but the remix is kind of lame. So you know, that song in my discography is kind of being pushed down a little bit. But yeah, it was tough. I mean, I kind of went missing probably between 2005 and 2008. I mean, in 2005, when the Virgin deal didn't work out, a very, very prominent and famous music industry person told me to kill myself.
Are you serious?
Yeah, being deadly serious. He said, you're 20.
That's horrible.
But he said, you're 25. No label will touch you anymore. You kind of, you know, back then, if you hadn't had a top that time, you were 25, you would, nobody wanted you.
Yeah.
Because that's why, like, now I'm so jealous of like the young artists who are like 28 and 30, and they're called young. Back in like the late 90s and early 2000s, you were finished by your 23, 25.
Totally.
You know, we had no choice. So that kind of, you know, I'm not going to say that it defeated me, but it wasn't nice to know that all these big label guys and all these A&R men who at one point embraced me with open arms and said I was like the new soulful voice, and they always just say like he's the new Kenny Thomas. It was right. It was Bigger who really picked me up, dusted me off. It was like, look, you're talented, kid. You know, let's do this again. Let's have a second rodeo. You know, do what you feel, you know, like you're doing. I'll tell you, I'll be your quality control. So you Marvin Wright, and I'll tell you if it's good and we can push it or not.
Was there no? I mean, we think about people like Sam Smith. Did things change when he came back out, or is it his vocals that really got? You know, when we think about how he got into soul music
I'm not sure if you're trying to get me in trouble here about this, but I won't say about him specifically, but what I'll say about the industry, and it's like what you said about the mergers. I got asked in 2006 to write for some very famous people's kids who just might have wanted to do music. Oh, you know, I might do music, I might be famous. I never had that option. It was like music or die. Music's everything for me. It was never like I might want to do this, might not. You know, I'm 4 years old. I'm still doing this, right? And I'm still doing it with the passion that I want to win and succeed and be competitive. And I refused to do it because they didn't believe it. It was full nepotism. But their parents had the money and the backing to make it happen. So let's just say, and I'm not saying anybody's names, let's just say that you're a 21-year-old kid, your parents are millionaires, and they can pay for you to have the best producers, the best engineers, the best writers. Mm-hmm. They've produced the album for you, right? They've already done the label's outlay of £250,000. Let's say they go to a label and say, look, we've got the album, it's finished, it's ready, we've even done the artwork for you. All you have to do is market it and you still make 50% retail of the album. Of course, you're going to sign that, right? Yeah. I mean, that's the reality of the economics of the music industry right now. So I try and mentor and I try and help as many young artists as I can. But the reality of the music industry is the majority of the successful ones have rich parents.
Yeah. And I guess, people playing devil's advocate.
A lot in Afro beats as well. A lot in it, yeah.
But people playing devil's advocate would say it is a business and you get your foot in the door. And once you're in the door, you've already got your brand name, like a Taylor Swift, went from country to now pop. Yep. But she had to get in the door. She's doing what she likes. Like so many artists who get in and they start to switch and do what they want because they're a star. And I do wonder when as I said, Soul Child had the same thing about my sticking to the principles. But I guess for those of us who are not in the industry, who are not singers, we would find it hard to see like, okay, why not play the game to get in and then you can take over instead of that. It's do or die this way, especially when you have a small niche industry. I mean, because you must have caused some friction, and people said, this guy's not playing ball. Why not help him? We need to just shut the door on him.
I'm smiling because I lost one deal of the guest rappers that they wanted on the album. At that time, or at a particular time, especially like say the early 2000s, I was adamant. I wanted KRS-One, I wanted Freddie Fox, and they were so kind of worried about like the street sounds I was bringing. They were like, no, that's not what we want. I mean, obviously, if you listen to my album, I've got a good mix. So I've kind of worked with the guys that I wanted to work with. So like Keith Murray, I've been a big like fan of his from '95. So like you had The Most Beautifulest Thing, and then there's that Blackstreet remix, the Carnegie Hall one with Scott, the Most Beautiful. I knew from that moment, I was like, that's the guy that I want. One day I will record a song with that guy. The fact that he mentions my name and he sometimes shouts me, like, so huge to me. And MC Brains. So when I was an 11-year-old, 12-year-old kid and Mike Bivins signed, MC Brains, I had to work with him. I didn't know when I reached out to him what he was doing, where he was in his life, if he's still recording, not recording. And I love his verse on You're That Kind of Girl. I think
So we'll get to the album, don't worry. But I'm just trying to understand when you're sticking to principles, when you don't have anything out,
Okay,
on
I'll put it like,
reflection, do you think it harmed your career, or do you think actually made you a better person just sticking to your principles?
yeah, because I'm happy. Because
Okay.
I don't live with my parents and I don't live above my mother's hairdressing salon, and live on benefits. And that's not a
Mm,
shout to anybody, who lives on benefits or does that, but I've had to work outside the music industry to keep my dream and my vision alive.
mm,
And that's just the cold hard reality of it. I've never had. So there's a play by Kenneth Lonergan called This Is Our Youth, and the basis of the play is rich kids in New York who have a safety net, but I don't have a safety net. If
mm,
I lose my money and I lose everything, I go homeless. So, for
mm,
example, I was talking about like Marvin's family, like his mom Cookie Ambrosius, his auntie Berta Williams. There was a point in my life when we lost our deals, and I was living off £1 a day. I was living off tomato ketchup sandwiches, 22p chocolate, made by Tesco's, and to fulfill my music dreams, because they weren't going to starve me out. So I had to rebuild everything I had all over again. But I still wouldn't want to sell out, because let's say I'd done a pop album in 2002. Let's say I signed the Sony deal, the boy band.
yeah.
Say that boy band is then unsuccessful, right? I've wasted 2 years of my life, maybe on TV, and people think I'm a loser, and because it's hard to be broke and famous. It's easy to be broke and not famous. If I walk around the streets, people are going to have the same assumptions about me anyway. But if you're famous, there's a special kind of hurt that brings. So I never wanted to sell out and be that way, that you're so famous that you can't do anything with it. So that's why I kind of stuck to my principles.
So you
I'd
were
rather
thinking that if it didn't work out, at least people wouldn't recognize me.
again, it's tough because I don't want to name names and I don't want to get
Yeah,
people in
yeah, yeah,
trouble.
yeah. No, we're not acting for names.
Let's say there was a famous pop star of like the early 2000s.
Mm,
He was mega famous, did cover versions, had all the label sport in the world, was on
mm,
TV every minute of the day.
mm,
2 years after that, right? He can't walk down the street without builders throwing things at him and calling him all kinds of dirty words, and people going, "Oh, look at you, look what you could have been," and he becomes agoraphobic. And he can't leave his house, because anytime he leaves his house, people either call him a loser, and he's got no money, right? His money's all gone. It's, because those guys at that time, they didn't make loads of money.
mm,
So, I don't want that. I see so many boy band members from the 90s and 2000s who literally have nothing,
mm,
whereas I'm at a part of my career, because I didn't sell out, because I didn't give it
mm,
all away. I kept my integrity. I can do
mm,
shows like this. People still want to work with me in the industry. I can call Keith Murray up, who, in my opinion, is one of the greatest, right? And he takes me seriously, because I
mm,
don't have the pop records. I didn't have blonde curly hair and dance like, I've stuck true to who I am, and I've stuck true to the R&B world always,
mm,
because that's my community. Those are the guys who've always had my back. That's why I did
mm.
Soulful Women, because the people who looked after me most, Karen Wheeler, Beverly Knight, Jane Eugene, those are the women that to me. But they're not going to talk to me if I've sold out and I'm selling, I'm singing booty music, or, what's the integrity in that?
Mm.
So I've always put principles on my name. I carry my dad's surname. So I carry that's like a realistic thing for me. And I'm not going to embarrass his name, and I'm not going to embarrass myself. Not for what, £100,000 for my whole life? No way.
Mm.
So that's why I've always kept my integrity, and will to this day.
So when you see that when did they become a shift or in R&B in the UK where it became viable that actually I might start seeing hope in actually breaking through? Was there any artist that shifted things here in the UK?
I don't think there was. I mean, Lamar obviously successful. Craig David was huge. I'm so proud of like Craig David's early work.
Was that not garage? Was that different than R&B? Was that considered soul music or what?
So my thing about Craig is this, right? So Craig won a songwriting competition with Damage. So Damage did this thing in '96 where they released a single, and the third track was an instrumental, and you had to write to the instrumental, send it to I think it was Wildstart was the label, and they would publish and record the song that won. Now I came second to Craig David.
Wow.
Like, and the joke that I always have, and I'd love to do, I pitched him a video once where he won everything and I came second. Because he, you know, he obviously won the competition because he is so talented, that kid. Like, it's insane. You know, he's been like a rival of mine since I was 18. But I think all the rivals that I've had are phenomenal. Cassius Henry, Thomas Julestock. I know I've said their name. Hayden from Alma Chaos. These kids can really sing. They're so good. You know, they're not like just, you know, pushovers. They're there for a reason. They don't have rich parents who can just, you know, bail them out of trouble every single time. You know, music's their life. You know, Sean Scoffrey's singing in Lion King in London right now, selling night after night because music is, singing's everything to him. That's what he is. He's a singing soul star. I'm kind of losing.
Here's the thing, and I'm going to play, I want to challenge you and be a bit, it's a devil's advocate type question. The early 2000s, you're floating around these labels. You know, what if one of these people, one of these A&R people, came with you, gave you a song, right? And it was a pop song, and let's just say it's on the lines of, say, Human League, Human.
Love that song. Love
right?
that song.
It's a pop record, but
yeah, Jim.
But the label's looking for it because they know this is going to be huge. They give it to you and say, "Do you want to do this song? Would you have taken it?" I'm just thinking how stubborn.
This is why I hate you, Stevie, because you know music.
About
I would have.
Singers, stubborn. I'm telling you, stubborn singers need A&R in. I'm sorry, they need.
No, I agree.
A&R direction.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Because you could have. What I'm saying is, they could have had a song for you back then that might have been pop, but it could have been the most credible pop record, and you could have had a Rick Astley record on your hand that people, because all it takes is, and I say it a lot, don't I? All it takes is one song.
So I'll give you this
song that people remember 30 years on. You can put 6 albums out, but it's just that one song people want to hear, you know.
I'll give you this one. I love that Human League song you're talking about. And to me, I've always considered that like a New Edition song. Like I could so hear like Ralph singing that song. You know, Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis, again, huge heroes of mine. Oh, sorry, I'm a hero of them. They probably don't know I exist, but I'm a huge they're heroes to me. So yeah, I probably would. So if you took a song, say like Joey Lawrence, Nothing My Love, what's that song? Nothing My Love. So that song, I actually genuinely like that song. When that song came out, I was like, that to me is like a New Jack Swing song. I don't think he gets the plaudits he gets. You know, he deserves a lot more credit for that song. I thought it was a great song. So maybe if a label had approached me with that, it could have happened. But I definitely was not offered any songs like that. And again,
so in your head, you're thinking, I want to work with KRS-One and Keith Murray and blah blah blah. Where there was a lot of UK pop. It was so watered down with R&B sounds on it. I reckon you can't probably miss the song here because you know you've got in your head, I want to be.
But I have to be so.
I think with you're so, and I've been there. You want to be. It's almost like you want to be so accepted by the black music community. You're so afraid of like.
Well, not afraid. I think it's a respecting, right? Like I don't want to come in, you know, and say I know best, and I don't want to upset anybody, and I don't want to, you know, ruin relationships. But I also do want that authenticity, and I want the acceptance, and I want the respect. You know, those are the New Edition, Keith Washington, Christopher Williams. Those are the guys I grew up on. Eric Benet. I met Eric Benet. He's a good guy. You know, it is important to get that acceptance. I wouldn't want to meet Ralph Tresvant and he's like, your music's whack. You know, that would kill me. I mean, then what I've wasted my life. But I don't agree with you though about the fact that, I mean, The problem I think we have in this country at the minute is with A&R, especially publishing companies. So a good publisher in the 80s and 90s would have got songs and gone out proactively to artists and pitch songs. That just doesn't happen anymore.
No,
it really doesn't. So like
gone. It's got A&R's just gone.
Yeah, but you're like kind of got to be there is sound by Centric Publishing, right? So that's one of the biggest publishing houses in the UK. Now, again, I won't mention, the head of A&R at Centric's email, but I had an interesting exchange with him where I was like, "What are you going to do with these songs? These songs are top 40 hits. Like they've been downloaded thousands of times. They've got 100,000 downloads on Spotify. What are you going to do with them? Who are you pitching them to? Why are they not on, these playlists or that? So, for example, Can't Beat the Weekend, which is a lot more organic, that's on like, the shop Savers. That's on the playlist of Savers. So if you go on Savers, you're probably going to hear Can't Beat the Weekend. But that hasn't been pitched by a publishing A&R or anybody from me, Soulchild, and Jimmy Anthony own the publishing for that. That's purely just because the algorithm pushed it in a certain place that it needed to be. But back in the day, you would have had an A&R publisher pushing those songs out and doing something with them.
Yeah, I remember hearing Simon Cowell's interview recently, and he mentioned that was what he had to do, but country music. So he had to get artists to cover those songs, and that's how he got his career at EMI. But I guess
what's PMG? Can I just? I'll give Simon.
This was before he did. This is when he first started. This is back when he was like 18 or 19.
See, the thing about Simon Cowell is when you meet him or when you meet him as a prospective artist, he always talks about John Montgomery, who's a country artist. And he's the guy who wrote I Swear for All for One. Okay. And he wrote pretty much all those R&B kind of crossover hits. They were all country songs, but they were reimagined in R&B form. So Simon Cowell loved John Montgomery. I remember like just sitting in his office and he was talking about it for like 20 minutes. About is there any songs in his catalog you think we could? And obviously, like Stevie's pointed out, I'm quite stubborn, so I was like, I don't think this is good. I'm like, could we not get like Babyface on this? Mark Nelson? Can I get Mark Nelson to write this? Because I mean, Mark Nelson got me in trouble too because, when his album Chocolate Mood came out, my like management at the time were so adamant I had to write a concept album like that. Because if you play that song from the first song all the way to the end, it just molds into this beautiful piece of music that all kind of, it's a little bit like the Troop album Mayday. It just works and it's like a story. It's like you're listening to a movie. And I was like, I don't think I really write like that. I think I write really good, like 3-4 minute songs that you can all just meld together. But I'm not sure if I want to write because obviously Mark Nelson would have been like 30 when, like a real mature songwriter. Whereas if I'm 21, 22, I'm just trying to write songs about girls. Not like thinking about these big, deep concepts. But sorry, but I did lose a tangent. I want to come back on this. So I think it's an important point where we're talking about safety nets and where you're saying about artists have that one song and they can do it again. The difference between a working class artist and a wealthy nepotism artist is once that kid who's a working class kid loses his shot, loses that single, loses that second single, he's got nowhere to go. He's working in Greg's, and then he's got to work in Greg's overtime to pay for studio time, mixing time, everything else. The opportunity is gone. But if you're a rich kid, you get every opportunity in the world. Oh, it didn't work with that label. That's fine. My parents have another 25,000 they could put into another single. That didn't work. Oh, they're giving me another 35,000. And that's where it's really difficult. And that's where I see the class differences in music. I remember once my mom, when I was like the flavor of the month in London, we got invited to a lot of like premieres and film parties. And Graham Norton hosted a party once, and I took my mom because my mom loved Graham Norton. And she pulled me aside and she was like, JP, she was like, you do realize like we're the only working class people here. We looked around and every other like artist or person there was, either like a nepotism or incredibly wealthy. Whereas back in the day, if you think someone like Marvin Gaye, like if you read Trouble Man by I'm not sure if Nathan George wrote that, but there's certain books about if you're Marvin Gaye and you're the drummer at Motown, and you've got no money, you've got nothing. It didn't matter to Berry Gordy, right? Berry Gordy is going to believe in you if you're talented. He doesn't care what your parents do. He didn't care about Marvin Gaye's parents at that time. He would just sign him. Whereas these days it's completely different. Do you think Marvin Gaye gets signed now?
I
That's
mean,
a scary thought, and that is a scary thought, isn't it? It's a scary thought.
But imagine Marvin Gaye is just a session drummer in a studio, let's say Bonafide in Old Street. Would a label who's just heard him sing a 30-second gospel song, I Had the Sparrow, would they then give him 25, 30K to do a
He'd probably
single?
end up on a label like Daptone or something like that, some boutique label. That's
I
scary.
think that what the label does is they go, do you have the money to create your own album, and then we'll maybe market it for you? And then Marvin Gaye, who's just a session drummer, doesn't have the money to make his album.
Yeah, but I think music has changed. Would a Luther get signed? Would we sign a Patti LaBelle? All these things can be So the industry has changed. Labels were smaller. They were. It was a very the economics was much different. So there was always the way the situation is now. It is very much TikTok, and everyone has all joined that TikTok algorithm. It's not. It's about quick music that you forget tomorrow and then you're on to the next one. It isn't about building careers. But what was when we look at your Beckwith album? Oh, actually, what's the name of the? I'm just trying to think about the name of your album that was released, because is it called Beckwith?
Yeah, it's called Beckwith. So it's B.K.W.H and I decided to call it Beckwith so people would stop asking me what B.K.W.H meant.
Okay, so you got your Beckwith album. What was the? When did you start working on it, and what was the? As an independent artist, how were you thinking about making an album to not just be what's success for an independent album? So when did you start working on it, and did you think about what success for this album would look like when you went in the studio to start recording it?
I'll be honest, no. So this album started when I spoke to somebody called Helen Williams from Elite Management, who used to represent me. And I was looking for a remix of You're That Kind of Girl. And she put me in touch with Jimmy Anthony. And Jimmy Anthony did this incredible New Jack Swing remix of You're That Kind of Girl, way past my expectations that I had. And I was like, oh, wow, this is really good. So I sent it to Bigger. Bigger starts playing it, sending it out, and it gets just an epic return. So I realized I've got to release it. So I upload it to DistroKid, and I get a phone call saying, oh, hi, we work for Spotify in London. Your song's triggered an algorithm which is linked to Bruno Mars's Finesse. So your song is going to be placed quite high in these, editorial playlists. I'm not going to lie to you. I had no idea what that meant. So I called a friend of the PRS and I'm like, look, I got this phone call. I don't know if it's real or not. And they're like, it's real. They're like, Apple have already contacted us to say that on the Apple Music playlists, this is going to go in high. And to be honest with the PRS, they were fantastic. They helped me register and get everything right. Bigger worked his magic, got it into all the right hands, got it played by everybody. And yeah, it did phenomenal. It far exceeded any expectations that I had.
When was this?
This came out in March 2020. No, sorry, July 2020. Now, what a huge advantage of the song had, and I didn't appreciate this at the time, because we were in lockdown during COVID, nobody could perform live. So when DJs were getting music, they were either getting old music or they were getting, you couldn't say this person's playing Wembley this week, so we've got to play his music. This person's playing the O2, we've got to play their music. There was no financial incentive for any DJs to promote a major label's artist. So DJs started playing that song, even pop, Heart FM, Smooth FM. And it got huge. And the song on its own merit stood out. I can't take any credit. There was any, musical genius behind it. It was a perfect storm. You know, I had friends saying, "This is what the music industry owes you, man." This is the universe sorting itself out. And my dad had just passed, unfortunately. So
Oh,
my
sorry.
biggest regret about this is my dad didn't get to see it happen, because he was there throughout all my struggles. Because he took, you know, like yours and Stevie's attitude of, he was like, "Why don't you just sell out?" He just said,
No,
he
no,
was
no,
like,
we didn't try to take you to
I'm not
sell out.
saying to sell out.
no, no, no. But
Sell
what I'm trying to say is,
out. No,
what he couldn't understand is why a label would offer me money and I
and
wouldn't
you
take
would
it.
refuse it. Yeah.
He, 'cause he couldn't get his mind, because my dad's dream was to play music. So he was like, if anybody offered me money right now, I'd go and play music. He was like, but kid, you've got these people genuinely want you to do something. He's like, why are you being so, you know, my mom's always had my back. I think because my mom likes soul music and she has been so supportive, you know, and she's probably had to listen to me sing Tevin Campbell a million times, even on like my worst days, and still back me. You know, she kind of knew where I was going with it and has always been super supportive. But my dad just couldn't quite figure it out. He was just, I don't understand what you're trying to achieve with this, that these people want you to take the money and you won't take the money.
Yeah, but you
I was
know,
like,
Rift was exactly the same after their first album. They went to the second album. They wanted to sound like Jodeci. The label says, "Okay, you've had your little play around with the album. Judy's got a boyfriend. It didn't do too good. Now we've got David Foster. We want to, get some big ballads and really push you in a different direction." Three of the five members says, "Nope, we want to still do some R&B and go and do like the whole Jodeci stuff because that's connecting us with the black community." Whilst the label was saying, "Look, we want to do these big ballads. Look at what Boys to Men are doing. We want you to go in that direction. We're going to pay for everything." They said no. Then they said, "Okay." They walked away from their record label, thinking that they'll go to Electra or the other places, and they were blacklisted. They said once you walked away, a phone call went, "Don't sign these guys," and they learned the hard way, and they actually fell out. It wasn't until half of them went to
Metavision.
Metavision and stuff like that. So I guess for but so when you mention about staying true to like who you are and stuff, these guys had that example of, no, we want this is the R&B stuff, and then you have some of us who come from who understand the economics of, man, it's
Yeah.
about money, it's about reach. I know Boyz II Men didn't like the fact that they were labeled like the pop version of Jodeci, but they were selling more records and they were doing more things, winning the Grammys. I don't think Jodeci won a Grammy. They had the Boyz II Men. How many have they won? And
So
they've sold all those records. So of course they were upset about that, but it opens doors and they're reaping it from there. So, but it's important that you are, uh, what the decisions you're making, and you can live with them no matter what. And that's the important part. Doesn't matter what everyone else says.
yeah, I can look at myself in the mirror, and the thing that I really like is I can play my album and I'm proud of it.
Mm.
Every song on that album, I back 100%. I love every song on that album. Every one of those songs means something to me. I'm just not an album where 5 or 6 of the songs are just there for politics or whatever reasons. I chose those songs. I put my own money into those songs. I'll probably lose money on those songs. But
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. That because when you did your, you're not my kind of girl. What was the idea? Was it just to release it and see what happens? Did you have a plan for it?
nope, not at all. And I couldn't do anything anyway, right? So that's another joke I have with my friends is, trust me to have a top 40 hit, number 29 in the charts, and I can't support it. I can't go on tour. I'm literally just stuck in my house in Enfield. I can't do
So
anything.
it was an official UK top 40
Yep.
chart.
Yeah. 29. And then Be There, which came out in January, hit 39. And it had a very similar, I think Be There was lucky that it just followed in the contrails of You're That Kind of Girl. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't call it lucky because I'm super proud of the record. I think Jimmy Anthony produced, an incredible song. He kind of got exactly what I was looking for, which is like an intro R&B street kind of Chucky Thompson, Eddie F kind of production. That's what I was going for, and he got that beautifully.
So how did you get to? I mean, I say one of my favorite hip hop artists is Keith Murray. The fact that you can just get called. You use your regular name as your rap name, and he has a very distinct, unique sound style of rapping that's almost like he's talking
Yeah, yeah.
in a way. So how did you connect with Keith Murray and get him on your
So,
record?
so most of the features on my album were A&R'd by my friend Dr. G. So he's like a UK hip hop producer, and he deals with a hell of a lot of rappers. So he got like Big Noid, Ghost, um, who else? Cool G Rap. You know,
Could you
obviously
have,
he's
yeah, MC Brains, yeah.
produced with him. So that was all down to Dr. G's. With MC Brains and Keith Murray, I reached out organically. I just hit Keith Murray up on Instagram. I was like, "Yo, Keith, big fan. Can I get a feature from you?" I sent him like a snippet of the song. I think he's on Instagram somewhere saying he liked the song. So we reached out, and what a cool guy. I mean, he's out there, but out there, and in my experience as a great, he's hilarious, and he can talk forever. And I don't think he understands that there is big charges between UK and American phone calls. And you're
So
like, I gotta pick my kid up from school. I gotta. He's, I'm not impressed with you, man. I'm gonna keep talking. And you're like, all right, that's cool. But
did you guys ever get to meet?
not me, but we spot. I checked in with them a couple of months ago to make sure everything's cool. And
Okay.
He came back and he was Keith Murray. He's a very unique individual, but he is everything I hoped he would be. Because the reason he made so much heat in London in '96 is he has no fear of anything. He got in trouble like when he came here on his first tour. He was on Hip Hop Connection. He was in Tottenham. He did a show, and then afterwards, some guys tried to test him, and he showed them that Keith Murray isn't anybody to mess with on a good day. No, I've always been, the Enigma album. He's just a huge idol. And MC Brains, as I said, I reached out to him because I was like, I have like a wish list of rappers. Father MC's on there, Akil Davidson. Those are the guys that I grew up. Even Tony Scott, who's the rapper who's on Under Pressure, the remix of Boyz II Men. I would have loved to have, had him on this album. Because I have like a list of, I've got like the more popular, like Ron DeVoe raps on So Gentle, like Johnny Gill's, I'm guessing 5th album, but like 3rd on Motown.
Yeah.
I was so jealous. I was like, I just wish you'd rap on one of my records. I just wish I could get Michael Bivins and Ronnie DeVoe to rap on one of my, songs. But then I have like, people like Mos Def I would love to work with, and Common and those kind of guys, KRS-One, Chuck D.
But does it get to a point where if you had too many features, you start becoming like an SWV's what's their 3rd album that they had all these features? Does it become a little too many?
Not for me. Not for me. I think I understand that argument. So like, I mean, Big would have been great to have here, with me, because a lot of the UK soul DJs always ask for my music without the rap features. But I think because I like the streets, and I spent a lot of time in London, with street guys, I like that influence. I like it there. It's that's part of the R&B hip hop I love. Like when Keith Murray on my record says, "Call my name and I'll come running," I mean, that links my song to Total's "Can't You See" a remix. That kind of has now like a musical levity to it, and a joining to it, which gives the song more legacy, which I just like the romance of that.
So Stevie, what was okay? Yeah, Stevie. I mean, what were your favorite songs on his album?
Like I was saying earlier, a lot of music is about timing. This album, when I first heard it, I was like, wow, he's done New Jack, he's done hip hop soul, and I thought, it's talking to people like me and Namdi, but the thing with that crowd is getting smaller and smaller. It's appealing to a very hard. It's the people who are just left, really, who remember that sound. It's tough because you could have called this album Stubborn, You know, you really could have called it stubborn.
I might,
you know,
I
it's
might
like
call a remix album stubborn.
you give me the sound that I grew up with, and you know, I love you for that. But at the same time, I'm thinking it's not the time. I'm not about the new Jack stuff, and I'm talking like you say you want to do more records with rappers on it, and it's just not the time at the moment. I'm seeing like I remember pre-2020 when I started playing Afro beats on radio, and there was people on my station laughing at me saying, "Why are you playing that?" Because I said in a few years' time, this is going to be the biggest thing since like I said no, and they were laughing at me, and I could see it then. It's like now I can see what's happening now, you know, and I can probably I can't predict the future, but I can see what's bubbling up and what's going to be big in like 1 or 2 years' time. Afro beats now has peaked; it's done, and that is a really harsh thing to say because I love it, but I know it's done. It's peaked. It's
But
you
the
know.
thing is,
They're
from my
you know,
perspective,
Afrobeat producers now that you know they're making like drill sounds and they're getting rappers on and this that it's done, it's done.
what I
And I'm
would say though about
what's
our generation is our generation's buys music still. So like our generation are the I'm the proof of that, right? Like if you go into iTunes right now, I have the #1 album R&B, I have the #1 single R&B. My album cover is the genre cover for R&B right now. And potentially at midweek charts, it looked like it was going to go top 40. The difference that I have is kids are streaming. I can't compete with that. Like I have no chance. If you try and get a 16, 17, 18-year-old kid to listen to my music, they're not going to do that. But if you've got somebody who has a credit card and pays for music from iTunes, they're still going to download good music. I mean, I still do. Every Friday, I'll watch Soul Child does like his new releases of the week. Let's say he does 5 songs. I'll probably buy 2 of those. I still spend actively between 10 and 20 quid a week on music, on downloads. And there's still that core audience in R&B who love it. Yeah, and those are the guys who've really supported me and looked after me and really backed this and gone after it. You know, as I said, with streams, that's a young person's business. I would love to get behind the mechanics of a streaming system to see what really is happening. So if you look at Beyonce, for example, when Jay-Z bought Tidal, he didn't buy that to necessarily make money from Tidal itself. What he did is he was buying the information of what people were listening to. So he knew that country music buyers are the late adapters to streaming music. So people who are listening to country music have not streamed music or had a streaming service until say 2023. When they did adapt to streaming, they started streaming country music. So Jay-Z behind the scene with Beyonce's team is seeing this huge spike in all these country artists like Chris Stapleton. I'm trying to think all the young Luke Combs. So they're obviously looking at it from a commercial aspect saying, all right, so the people who are now paying for these subscription services are listening to country. Like country music at the minute is on fire. And it's not because they're doing anything different or new. It's purely because the people who were buying CDs in Walmart and Target are now on subscription channels. So that's where you're really seeing like the data with this. I mean, I don't have access to it. As you know, we said, my stubborn remix album, I might take on some of your ideas and we'll adapt it and see if I can get some that, you know, because I'm definitely interested in what you said, like 100%. And if that music is available and people are making that music and I think it's good, then, you know, I'm definitely interested in that. But it was interesting you said about my voice being a bit unique. I've got a shout out. You know how everybody gives Teddy Riley plaudits for his production, his writing, his innovation. I'm always impressed with his vocals. And the reason I'm impressed with his vocals, a vocal teacher taught me this when I was younger. He was like, listen to all these singers in the R&B space. Everybody was wanting to be a crooner. You know, Keith Washington, Freddie Jackson, Gerald Alston. We played all these ballads. And he was like, what stands out to you? And it was Teddy's voice. Now, he may not have been doing all these crazy phrases and all these intricate notes and, you know, but his voice stood out. And I think when Marvin produces me, he's very conscious of me being my own artist. He's always like, you need to JP this out. You need to Beckwith this out. Like this, don't sound too much like Ray J. Don't sound, because my natural tone is probably closer to Ray J and London Jones than it is anything else. So I'm always trying to maybe be a little bit more head singing, maybe a little bit nasally, singing in like D and F, raising, you know, the key of my voice up a little bit. Whereas I could probably sit back a little bit and make my tone richer. So that uniqueness of voice that Teddy Riley has is such an inspiration to me, which I think people never, ever talk about. I mean, the way he opens up like You Blow My Mind, and it's just awesome. And Fantasy by Guy. I remember hearing that for the first time, it just blew my mind. Or Raphael Sadiq's voice. It really obsessed me when people don't rate Raphael Sadiq's voice. I'm like, but you know his voice immediately. I mean, it says something to me when I listen to it. I love his voice. I mean, you probably picked up on my song Get Down, where I kind of shout out, I Don't Know What You Came to Do from the House Party 2 soundtrack.
Okay.
Little Easter eggs like that. No, like You're That Kind of Girl. I wrote to Ivan Mateus, who sang a song called So Good to Come Home To, which was a big Dan Warm. So Ivan Mateus is one of my favorite singers. I mean, how he is not like a household name is, you know, his voice.
Is he not the one that wrote Don't Go by In Vogue?
Yeah. That's Ivan
Mateus.
Okay. He's a phenomenal singer. And the promo that he put out on EMI was amazing. You know, and if you listen to You're That Kind of Girl, I mentioned, you know, Can't Wait to Come Home To, which is my little shout out to him on So Good. He picked it up straight away. He was like, I see you, Playboy. I know what you do.
Okay. So what's the hope and expectation for the album, just as an independent artist? What is success for an album in 2024?
I think a success for me, I think if you're looking at it, it's already, you know, it's sitting at 62 in the album charts, which I think is amazing. And speaking to like one of our marketing representatives last week, when the album hit #1 in the iTunes store, and I didn't know this, it hit #1 single, #1 album. So DJ Soul Child's remix of Can't Beat the Weekend was like #1 for 5 days. Phenomenal. You know, people have just really got behind that song. I think Blues and Soul had it as the #2 R&B record of last year. But when I held both spots, you get the genre spot on iTunes. So if you go on the front page of iTunes right now and you go on the Best Buy of like 59p singles, my single's right there. It's the front page. If you go onto the front page of the recently released albums, it's there. And you can only get that if you get the downloads and you can get, you know, that traction behind it. So it's kind of already done better than I thought it was going to do. I definitely didn't think it was going to chart nationally, if I'm honest with you. I wanted to get the #1 R&B album, and Soul Child will tell you this. Last time I saw him, I was like, I want that. I was like, the one thing I don't have is a #1 R&B album, and I want it so badly. So I've, you know, worked my, you know, I won't swear, but I've worked really hard over the last month or so, and I know Bigger has too. My whole team has. Danielle Horan. We really tried our best to get it there, and they got there. And then obviously Nash's chart, it did really well in the midweeks this week. But the thing that's hurt me this week is Glastonbury. So, you know, having that amount of TV space that those guys had. So like you saw Coldplay's albums all go back in the top 40. Dua Lipa's albums all went top 40. And then you've got my little album trying to fight away and trying to compete against them with no TV, you know, airplay whatsoever, purely just radio airplay, streaming, playlists. I mean, we've got quite a few campaigns on Spotify. We've got like a big showcase campaign with them, and we've got a marquee campaign with them that's been phenomenal. But yeah, it's already exceeded my expectations. But I think what killed me was getting that top 40 hit. I think when You're That Kind of Girl got 29, and the doors that opened for me, it got me back into labels. You know, it got me a meeting with Steve Crane at Sony Records, head of A&R there. It put me back on the radar of people. And it also made me hungry to get more of it. I had a little taste, but now I want more. Now I want to see what I can do. Can I get more? Can I do better? Can I write better songs? Can I get better production?
So I mean, a track like Can't Beat the Weekend, I can hear that on radio too.
Yeah, I mean, bigger. I got
You know, I
there.
can hear that daytime radio too. It
Yeah.
would, you know, the audience ain't going to be offended by that track. It's catchy. You know, there is tracks on this album that are just they are perfect for radio.
Yeah, I mean, Can't Be the Weekend. I mean, I know Soul Child talked about it last time he was on the show, like with this double meaning lyric. I mean, that song I'm really proud of, because obviously most people think it's about the weekend and just having a great time, when reality is it's just saying that I can't beat the weekend in the charts. No matter how hard I try, no matter how, I just can't beat that guy. I mean, I've been him now.
I didn't think it was the weekend, but it's okay.
Yeah, I mean,
So
it's
that's why
quite.
he just says can't beat Craig David next single.
Yeah, well, as I said, I would love to do a video where I just lose Craig David continuously, like chess or. And to be honest, that was Soul Child's idea for Can't Beat the Weekend. He was like, you need to get somebody who looks like the Weekend, and you need to like lose a basketball game to him. You need to like lose a football game to him. Which is, if I had the budget, I would love to do that, but it's just. You know, the reality is it's not, you know, possible. But yeah, but going back to Craig again, he's the first guy that I saw in real life make real money from the music industry. When he signed for Atlantic, I'd felt like the whole of the UK had signed for Atlantic. You know, he got a massive deal. But that was, you know, for a kid from Southampton who'd been bullied pretty much his whole life to go and, you know, and be this big, you know, popular. I mean, Namdi, were you in America when he came out?
So when he first came out, I was in the US, but I was here in 2001, bought his CD, took it back to the States, and people weren't feeling it until I don't know who he signed for in the US, and
It was Atlantic.
yeah, so they really pushed. What they did was to really push him on live shows with the guitarist. So that really said, wow, this guy can sing, especially with the music, and he was freestyling and singing. That really opened the doors for him, and then the simplicity of the lyrics that you could hear, and we hadn't heard of even Rodney was talked about when he did what's his name? It's saying you can you can the song he did with Destiny Child that won the
Say My Name.
Say My Name. He was doing garage. He said he goes in the UK, listened to a lot of garage music, and his first original production was garage. But everyone hated it. They just couldn't. But this was he left some elements in it, but that was sort of a garage track because of what Craig was doing and what he was getting from the UK. So it was refreshing music when he went back to the States. When he went to the States to record his second album and did What's Your Flavor, it kind of alienated everyone, kind of like, well, what's this? So that was the difference with the second album that didn't do well because he left the roots, which really, which really got him stuff. But I guess just going back to, the album now that you've put it together and packaged it out, do we expect to see you doing video showcases of you singing these tracks? Because I know you say you don't like to do live shows, but then visually, are you going to be singing letting us see you perform these tracks?
Quite possibly. I mean, I've thought about it. I've discussed maybe doing like an East Coast tour in the UK, going from like say Norwich and Colchester all the way up to Newcastle. That's a possibility. But it's just whether I have the time and the patience to do that. Because my thing now is I want to record a second album. My main focus now is, this is done now. So this collection of songs has served me well. But to be honest, on Saturday, after so Friday tomorrow, all the final charts comes out. Promotion ends tomorrow. That's the campaign end. Well, it actually ends in 45 minutes. So when it goes midnight Thursday, that's campaign's done. I really want to get started with that second album.
Wow, what do you expect to do in the second album?
I want it to be, so the thing I'm proud about this album is I never wanted to write an album that's purely love songs. It was my only criticism of R&B albums is they were always love songs, 14 songs about love. Whereas my album has like Can't Beat the Weekend, Soulful Women, which is celebrating all the women in the music industry. It's not typical. Get Down is just about like me, you know, what I listen to, what I like to do. It's not all love songs. And I think I'd like to get maybe a little bit more political with the album. You know, there's a few things that happen in the UK I'm not too happy about that I think I'd like to kind of sing about. And yeah, I think I want to write some. I mean, one song I have is called Songs by Committee, which again, you guys call me stubborn, and it's about how I refuse to do songs by committee. So now a publisher will contact you and they'll put you in a room with 6 other writers and play an instrumental and expect you to write. But for me, that's not what songwriting is. That's not how I write songs. You know, my ideal of writing a song is Babyface writing "Can We Talk?" Right?
Well, he did write it with Daryl Simmons, so he did.
Okay. So what Babyface songs that he did is like his own album, right? For like for the Cool in You, like When Will I See You Again? That's just Babyface, right? That's not Daryl Simmons.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of Keith Anderson, depending on his time frame, he did a lot of tracks with Daryl and a lot with. Well, after he did, I would say if you go to his first solo stuff was a lot of Waiting to Exhale, but then he got produced like John. And Keith Anderson to work alongside of him, but lyrically,
John though, what a good guy. I spoke to him recently. I probably had so many questions. I think he produced one of Tevin Campbell's song, "Can You Learn to Love," which is one of my favorite Tevin Campbell songs. I'm such a huge Tevin Campbell fan, and that was a Babyface song that John produced.
Yeah, so Babyface was writing tracks, and then John would just pick it up and do some of the production on it. So are you saying that in 45 minutes or so, this album, it's out there, people can buy it and stuff, but you're going to be on for the next one?
Yeah, I think the end date was always going to be the 5th of July. So midnight, or that then, so, thank you for having me, because this is like probably the coolest thing that I've done with the campaign. And
well, listen, half-time viewers who've not heard this album, right, need to check it out because it will appeal to halftime chat viewers. I mean, let's talk about All My Love.
Number 1 record in the R&B charts right now.
It's perfect halftime chat record.
It sounds like the intro music of the actual YouTube channel. When I heard the music, I was like, you could probably mix that into All My Love. But yeah, All My Love is essentially like is a tribute to Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis, and New Edition. I mean, you can hear the Easter eggs all over that with the na 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 na, with the Ralph Tresvant from Sensitivity, and I got the Bobby bits in there, and
I need somebody, Ralph.
Yeah, let me tell you, that second Ralph Tresvant album is, I think that his song "Sexo" on the album is a song that I've chased my whole career. I think the sound that he got on that, but I'm always biased towards Ralph Tresvant. I'm always biased towards New Edition. It's like Ricky Bell. If I could have all the money in the world, I would produce a Ricky Bell album, because I know he has a solo album and it was great, but oh man, he's so good and so underrated. He's phenomenal, and literally he's a guy. I mean, again, I only figured out with the Heartbreak album. So on the Candy Girl album, when I was a little kid, his name on the back of the sleeve is Ricardo. So I always thought his name was Ricardo until the Heartbreak album came out. Okay, and just to go back to that, so the album that Marshall was going to produce with me and Marvin at Virgin, that was actually called JP Heartbreak, for like my real name. I mean, I know that Jagged Edge did JE Heartbreak.
Okay,
yeah. I mean, that album would have been a real good album for the time. We had like one of the songs had like the Candy Girl sample in it, but to go back to All My Love and not kind of go off kilter too much. My dream is that those guys can hear it. It's got a big bridge in there. I tried to take it right back. If it isn't love, you can hear elements of that in there, and the only thing it's missing is Ronnie and Mike. If they just came with a cool little 16 bars, it would make that song complete. But I'm really proud of it. That's 100% me production and writing. I'm incredibly proud, especially today, that it hit #1.
Wow.
I never thought I would produce an R&B #1 record. That's never even entered my dream space. So the fact that
Yeah.
people have been kind enough and generous enough to support that, and like Stevie, you saying all those kind words about it, and if people then investigate after this conversation, I'm so grateful. It's, again, didn't expect it. The fact that it's worked so well is unbelievable.
So I guess it'll be interesting to see if you start to reach out to veteran R&B singers to come and collaborate with you. This time around, you got hip hop artists, so it'll be interesting to see if you go out and get some R&B artists to
I'll be
collaborate
honest,
and do it.
I don't get intimidated often, but those guys, they do intimidate me. Like you were talking about the 3 guys from Riff who joined Men of Vision.
Yeah.
I mean, Break It Off. I listened to that today. That's like, such a phenomenal R&B record. And them leaving Riff to do that, I kind of think that's awesome. Like, you produce something timeless. Now, let's say they only got 1,000, 1,500 streams there, but those people, I mean, I'll support those guys forever. Those guys could throw any record out and I'd support, because I love that record. I mean, that second Men of Vision album for me is close to R&B perfection. You've got like the Neptunes on there with all those crazy Star Trek samples, which as a young music, student, blew my mind. I was like, how are you going to have a Star Trek door opening and closing in a song? That's crazy. But it's like their snare drum throughout the whole song. But again, that's the Neptunes. At that time, they were, top of the game as well. But yeah, I know I would love to, I obviously I'm a fan of yours. I've mentioned this before, Namdi, and yours, Stevie. And when I see you guys, I mean, having like Tim and Bob on your channel, just listen to those stories, just makes so much sense to me. And like, as a fan that I am, when you're discussing with those guys about the first 112 album and how those songs were really for Boyz II Men's second album, it just makes so much sense. And then you add the remix Boyz II Men album in there with their Make Love remix. I'm not sure if Tim and Bob did that, but it kind of fits with the 112 first album. And I think that Make Love remix that Boyz II Men did on that remix album, again, is a song that I've always chased my whole career. I just think it's so good. And it probably is like their Jodeci moment, where they're like, okay, this is street. And again, in Brixton, those guys who play that song, that song was probably the only Boyz II Men song they were playing in the streets.
Wow. Yeah.
And then if you think you're not walking through Brixton to go play basketball and you're listening to Water Runs Dry, I am, because I'm the biggest Boyz II Men fan alive. But you'd get those guys who'd be like, no, I need to listen to Jagged Edge, or I need to listen to Jodeci.
Hence, you have people like Men of Rift just saying, "No, we want to be like Jodeci," and you have business people that are thinking, "Well, they've only sold this many, but Boyz II Men have sold this many. I know who I would want to be like. I probably want to be the one who's selling," and But yeah,
here's a question for you then on that. All for One probably sold a lot more records than Jodeci did. But Jodeci can go on tour whenever they want to. They've just been on tour with New Edition. They're selling out arenas. Their legacy is solid. But would you rather be with All for One and sell all those records and be like successful for those 5 years? Or would you rather be like Jodeci, where you have that early legacy, you make 3 unbelievable records, and now you can tour off those records for the rest of your life? I was playing, Diary of a Madman again today. I just had it on while I was running. I mean, it's a phenomenal piece of work. I mean, Casey and Jojo at that time with Devante's production, I'd want to be in Jodeci.
Yeah, I think if you think of the
and that's not disrespect to All for One, by the way. I just want to say,
I mean, but they had the I Swear, but they didn't. I mean, they had the massive big single and the album that came out, but they weren't consistent. Boyz II Men.
They had three huge songs. They had they had I Can Love You Like
albums.
That.
We're talking about albums. I mean, these guys both put up at least three albums out and weren't as consistent. But as I said, I think you most artists, when their first album blows up, goes diamond, then you can start to think, okay, let's have let's work on the direction of a follow-up album and stuff. But anyway, I guess it's going to be interesting to see the direction you take with your new album and who you might feature on there. If there are going to be legacy R&B acts that you invite onto your album, which it would be great.
I mean,
You did hip hop on this
invite,
album, maybe you do some R&B on this next.
I would invite all of them. Like Brian McKnight, Joe, Keith Wash. I think I mentioned Keith Washington, but I so loved Keith like growing up. Yeah, I mean Brian McKnight, phenomenal. His second album, is it I Remember You or I Remember? I mean, such a beautifully delicate.
I'm a big fan of his debut album. His debut album, it was one of the albums I just would start and never stop playing. I just thought that was his masterpiece.
I liked his second album. I thought the writing on his second album was incredible. Like Merrily, Day the Chariots Come, I Remember You. I know it wasn't as commercially successful as his first album. But I just thought from a lyrical standpoint, I thought it was quite beautiful.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's definitely been a pleasure. I mean, I always thought I end with asking my guests if favorite movie stuck on an elevator. What would you pick to watch?
Favorite movie?
Yeah.
Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner.
If you build it, they will come.
If you build it, they will come. That's one of my favorite all-time movies. I think that relationship between father and son and rekindling something that's lost. I think the performances in that movie, the Kevin Costner has like 2 dialogue pieces which are phenomenal. Ray Liotta is brilliant. James Earl Jones is probably one of my favorite actors. He's phenomenal as Terrence Mann.
But I do use that phrase with most with a lot of people I meet up with about creating it, and the audience will come. Most people are like, well, I'll wait till the audience come, then I'll start to build. And I always use that as an inspiration. Look, build your platform, build your, release your music, whatever it is, and you get the audience. And so that's, if you build it, they will come, is something that I use a lot. What about favorite, all-time favorite song?
End of the Road, Boyz II Men.
Okay.
If I'm honest, it was going to be Can You Stand the Rain by New Edition, but it's probably that. Yeah. There's another song that I like. I don't know if you remember, there's an artist called Tommy Sims. He was signed to Babyface and Andre Harrell on New America.
Wow.
Yeah, I've got it. I listen to this pretty much all the time. So this is, I don't know if you can see it, Tommy Sims.
I remember that album. It's got some great stuff on it.
Listen, when I talk to like country writers and like singer-songwriters, they're more inspired by this album than probably any. His legacy is phenomenal. So he's like a male Tracy Chapman, if you will. Wow. And he has a song called Write This Way. And it's an incredibly sad song. And it's about losing. And it's about not performing and doubting yourself. And just a phenomenal song. Again, if I couldn't produce Ricky Bell's album, I would sign this guy and just be like, do whatever you need to do because you're a genius. The world hasn't caught up with him yet.
Wow. Any final messages, Stevie, before we end this 2-hour interview?
I said, to halftime chat listeners, we talk about, we love this sound that he's done in his album. So just please go and check it, have a listen to it. There's something on there for you, definitely. This is why I wanted to get him on the channel, really. He's making the sound that we're talking about every week. He needs to be, we need to get him on and plug what he's doing. So go and check the album out. It's been fantastic talking to you, Listen. Obviously you've got a lot of stories. You've been through the millia,
I've thank you for having me, right? Because I'll be honest, I think this is the most important R&B platform that there is. So you guys reaching out and even having me just means so much to me. As I said, I watched this, like Tim and Bob, the Darren Lighty show. you know, it's important to me, and it's important to what I listen to, how I feel about music. And I just think you guys do an outstanding job. I think that you really promote the good stuff. That, I mean, you had Darkchild, you had Elder Barge on the show. Do you know how crazy that is to me? That you have Elder Barge and then you have me. You know, again, I'm such a fan. I mean, that guy's a genius, right? You listen to like the first 3 Barge albums. I mean, that guy was on fire. My Christmas present like last year was Tommy DeBarge's album, his book. Sorry, you know, I've got Bunny DeBarge's books. You know, so you guys letting me on your show from a legacy standpoint to me just means so much to me. You know, because El DeBarge to me is like a hero, like a legend that I can't even imagine coming close to. But here I am, you know, and you guys are letting me speak on the same kind of channel. So thank you.
Yeah.
Listen,
Yeah,
it's hard enough. It sounds like you say you're going at it for years here.
Yeah.
You know,
It's been tough.
You know, and like you say, you've done something that we appreciate, and I know the listeners will appreciate when they hear it. So, you know,
yeah, and you know it does, you know, as I said when I interviewed DJ Soulchild, and he spoke about his own opportunity, that moment of he could have done a boy band situation, but he walked out. And of course, people who watched that were like, "What? Why?" And I was saying the same thing. But I think it's unless you're in it, you won't understand it. I mean, the average person, because I speak to all these music people, but I don't know what it was like, and they could make decisions that I probably today would think, no, why didn't you make this decision? But when you're in it, you just don't know. So I understand when you were saying that your integrity and stuff. I know it for the average person, it may not make sense, but if you're passionate about stuff, if you have a vision, if you have a passion about it, and maybe because you are trying to, you may feel as if, look, I want to stay true to what I believe in. I would think the most who was what's his name, Neo was very similar because he was signed to Columbia, and he wasn't happy with the direction of the album he wanted, and he was shelved. And you do have some artists who will stand up on that, but most times, because he's not looking to be accepted within the R&B community, he probably could say, "Yeah, I'll do it, put it out, and see what happens." But as you said, you may just only get that one shot, and if it doesn't work out, then it's no. Not everyone's going to have that success as Pink. Not everyone's going to have the opportunity like Justin Timberlake coming out with some of the pop stuff. Yes, you may get Teddy Riley to do your remix, but they went so 20, 30, 40 million that he could then bring Timbaland and the Neptunes to do his album and still keep, and they're like, yeah, we'll trust you. But not everyone's going to have that opportunity. So yes, it was great hearing how you stuck to things despite being able to find an easy way out. And we're definitely going to wish you all the success going forward. If there are any of the artists who I've spoken to that you think would be great to feature on the album that that it could make it happen, then you can let me know. So
Definitely
we'll
DM
see
you
if they can and see.
Well, you have, I mean, you have Jackie McGee. I saw on the show. I mean, what a legend. I mean, she's phenomenal. But you interview all my favorite, like Shades. So you had like TL Cross on your show. TL Cross, when he was in La Day, I mean, that's one of my favorite groups of all time. Like I'd message him probably once a month, just say thank you, because those first 2 La Day albums, you know, his voice was so good. Like he went from 94 to 97, he was just on fire, you know, and to someone like me who wants to sound like him and replicate his runs, just, you know, and then you meet him and he's such a lovely guy. And you think of his work in that time. He was on Johnny Gill's album. He was working with Albie Shaw. You know, he was writing his own songs. He did Usher's first album. Just you know, I would have liked to have put myself. I said this to Pete Lewis at Blues and Soul magazine. New York, 1994. You've got Horace Brown, Donnell Jones, you know, T.L. Cross. Usher, they're all hungry. Where do you fit in? Like, how hard do you have to fight against these guys to get studio times, to record with them? You know, I mean, these guys are just absolute legends. I mean, if I could write a book, I'd write about the Andre Harrell 4-year period at Motown, because I'm just obsessed with it. Because you have a guy who's at the top of his game, just produced a huge TV show, has created Soul for Real, Heavy D, you know, pretty much invented P. Diddy. And then he goes to Motown, where it should be successful. You know, it's hard to fail at Motown. When you look at like Vita Sparks, you know, they've had so many good CEOs there. And it just, for some reason, it went wrong. But why? Because the music was, Johnny Gill's album, you know, was phenomenal. That might be my favorite album by Johnny Gill. You know, you had the remix album by Boyz II Men. I know they didn't like it, but it was great. The Lade album was phenomenal. Shades were fantastic. You know, everybody was in love with them, and everybody loved, you know, I'll Be Around. You know, yeah, Jason Weaver. Oh, I was so jealous of Jason Weaver. Again, why does he have to be so nice? He's like, again, the nicest guy when you meet him, but I was so jealous of him because I always got called immature for my age. It was always like, oh, he's trying to sound grown up. But when Jason Weaver was in Blues and Soul, it was the mature sound of the teenage kids. I was like, why don't they like me like they like Jason Weaver? Like, what the, you know, Jay Valentine was the same when he was with the Neutrons. Everybody would say these mature young kids sound like the Jacksons. And then I'd be in Smash Hits and they'd be like, this immature wannabe soul guy. I'm like, why don't I get the same, you know, those are, you know, the guys that I would have liked to have competed against. Obviously, the truth is they were selling millions of records and being super uber successful. But yeah, I was always so jealous. I was saying to Stevie actually a couple of weeks ago, with like Bigger being my manager, it's like the most poetic thing because he had like Derek Dixon, Carl Henry. Oh, the reviews those guys would get were phenomenal. And I'm a fan of their work, but I was so jealous because I wanted to be Bigger's favorite son. I wanted to be the gold. And it was so tough to beat those guys because they were on fire. I mean, Derek Dixon had like 2 singles, which were just unbelievable. But again, Stevie, to go back to your point, though, major labels wouldn't sign it because they didn't get it. So you'd say, look, these are the best. You go through Brixton, Camberwell, or you go through Tottenham, Wood Green. These are the records that everybody on the street's listening to. Record labels would not have it. They're like, nope, we need Take That singing a cover version of How Deep Is Your Love. I did a test with that with Portrait. I played Friends like the How Deep Is Your Love Portrait version against the Take That version, and they all chose Take That. And I'm like, you guys are insane. Because, I mean, Portrait, that second album, oh my, I mean, that's music genius to me. You know, the bass sounds they were getting on Can I Call You, the delicate, like, tone of the voices. Oh, I mean, I'm getting goosebumps now just thinking about it.
But with everything, think about we spoke about Zomba, Jive. You know, when you're selling 20 million Britney Backstreet Boys and in sync, you don't have time for Kumu D or for who did we interview recently that was on Jive and they released. You know, they don't have. There's no space because this is what's bringing in the money. So anything else that's going to take up too much space, they let you go.
So Clive Calder obviously had Zomba and Jive.
Yeah.
And I've met him twice. And I'll be honest, he was really cool with me personally. And if you look at like the Pure Swing compilations, you might not have seen them in the UK, but they were huge here. He backed all his R&B artists to the hilt. And he really did push them, like the High Five stuff here. It may not have charted, but that wasn't because Clive didn't believe it or didn't push it. It was purely just it didn't connect in the UK at that time. They just wanted a different sound. But Clive Calder, honestly, I promise you, and I'm not saying this to get favors from him, you know, I'm sure he wouldn't be interested in signing me anyway, but he genuinely believed in R&B music in the 90s, especially in the UK, and pushed it. He put his money behind it. So he probably lost money in a lot of projects, but he's one of the few good guys. There's not many of those good guys around in the industry. You know, you've got Ian McNay. He's a great guy, big, you know, studio executive. You got Clive Cowell. Some of them are good guys. Sam Cowell, I've got no issue with him. You know, he may not produce the music that I particularly like, and I couldn't sign to BMG because I was too stubborn. But you know, I think he's always tried to do right by his artist, though. There's not many people who've signed to him who don't like him afterwards. So like say like if you sign to Bad Boy, I mean the fact that none of those Bad Boy guys are millionaires is beyond me. Because you look at Motown and you look at Berry Gordy, he looked after everybody. Not one person had a bad word to say about him in the 80s and 90s. You know, he made Smokey Robinson one of the most successful people alive.
Yeah.
You know, Martin Vandellas, Four Tops, the Temps, you know, if you ask Richard Tyson from Temptations, he'll tell you that when they left Motown, it was the worst thing that ever happened to them.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's definitely keep going on and going on. But yeah, next year, we'll as I said, once you're onto your next album, you know, we can always get you back for an update, you know, to see where things are and stuff like that. But it was definitely great to have you and go through that story. And you know,
I'm going to leave this guy with one final thought. There's a guy, a New Jack Swing artist who had a major hit worldwide called My Prerogative. You might have heard of it, called Bobby Brown. What we've learned tonight is this. We've got this guy here, Namdi, called B.K.W.H. He's stubborn. What a single that would make, maybe.
Oh, I'm writing that. As soon as we leave there, I'm writing that.
Right, that'd make a B.K.W.H. stubborn.
You guys will get publishing splits on that.
I'll leave you with that thought, B.K.W.H.
It's happening. DJ Soulchild, if you're listening, Jimmy Ante, if you're listening, let's do this. I'm happy with that. I can write that all day long.
Okay. Yes, we'll look at that. Could be another summer jam, so that'll be definitely interesting. But we'll definitely thank you. Thanks, guys, for tuning in and stuff. Over here in the UK, as we started, we started with a conservative government, but we're ending the night with a new government. So God knows how much the country changes over the next going forward. But you know, we can only hope for the best, if not. But anyway, happy 4th of July for those in the States, and for us here, back to work on Friday. Just search him out. You could see his album is available on all streaming services, YouTube, and you can. If you just search Beckwith, the B.K.W.H, you will be able to see him pop up. Search from IG, Facebook as well. But
get that album, get it downloaded and listened to.
Download and listen and stream. And everything.
We're on repeat.
Yeah, please do. Repeat as many times as you can.
If you can, yeah. Especially, so he's got some good tracks. I love the one with the Keith Murray. He had Ghostface Killer, MC Brains, and so
because I forgot Coogee Rap, and you know he's one of my heroes. And
so
awesome. I asked him not to cuss, he didn't cuss. So.
Definitely. Well, thanks, Beckwith. Thanks, guys, and we'll definitely.